Today I'm joined by a leader who I've had the honor of standing beside on the front lines, State Representative Eddie Andrews. Eddie represents Iowa House District 43 and has been a tireless advocate for mental health reform, parental rights, and medical freedom. He's a man of conviction and compassion, someone who has consistently voted according to principle, even in the face of personal and political tension. I was honored to give the speech at his campaign announcement, and I'm proud to welcome him here today on the show. So thanks, Eddie, for joining us.
Yes, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, I see you on Facebook, and, there's that saying, Eddie is everywhere, and now Eddie is here in the studio.
I've heard that phrase quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. So how's the campaign going?
It's going very well. I mean, as I would expect it. Right. The reality is I'm very well known in certain parts of the state and not so well known in other parts of the state. And I knew that was going to be part of the campaign. I wouldn't even say a challenge. I just knew that was going to be a hurdle that we had to overcome. And it's almost like the first campaign that I ran. Right. Obviously, it's completely different, but there are parts of it that are reminiscent of it. Right. I was a political unknown. My very first race, I was facing an incumbent with money. They outspent us 6-1. And no one knew who we were, but we had a positive message. We had a winning message, a message that resonated, sincerity, passion on our side. And we kept pounding, we kept hitting. And probably 2/3 of the campaign, no one knew who we were. And then all of a sudden, oh, there's this guy, Eddie, right? And it's one of those overnight, oh, here he is kind of things. And I know that is very similar to what's going on now. We're pounding, we're hitting the parts of where we need to hit. We're just in this week alone. I'm sorry, it's Sunday now, but the prior week we were in Lyon County, O'Brien County, Plymouth County on the northwest side of the state. We were in Dubuque County. We were in Jackson County. We were in Lee County. And last I checked, that's
wow.
That's a lot. And then, we had a parade. We were all over. And so the human part, the campaigning part, I think is going exactly where we assumed it would be going, and our message is resonating. It's interesting when we show up at a place that I've never been and people say, Eddie, I'm so glad you're running. We're excited for you. Oh my goodness. And giving me hugs. And I'm thinking, who are these people? Why do they know me? We were in Jackson County this past week, and this lady says, Eddie, the reason I'm behind you, even more so, I like your policies, and I'm a conservative and all those things. But the reason that pulled me more so to your side is because I was at the Capitol and you took time to meet with us, and I saw somebody pulling you away and you had to go to a meeting, and you said, no, I'm talking to constituents. And she said, well, at that time you weren't our constituent. You're just some guy, some representative, but you understood the power of listening to people and hearing what we had to say. And I didn't know her,
Right.
But I do like to listen. I tell people that you're never going to find anybody who out listens and outworks me. And so,
yeah, and that's the truth. I tell you, before I announced my run for county supervisor, I was in a parade with you and Representative Gelbach. And I always tell people, I ride my little scooter. It's kind of my shtick,
that's right. I like that little scooter that you had. Yeah.
But after seeing you and the energy you put into that, I think the parade might have been 2 miles, but you must have gone 5 miles at least, because I'd look and you would be in somebody's yard on their front porch. And then 2 seconds later, you'd be across the street in the grass talking with the, parents in the back. And I've never seen anybody do that. I mean, you had your tennis shoes on and you were running.
I love it because, yesterday we were in Pleasant Hill. We did a parade yesterday, and some guy says, now I know what it really is to run for office.
Right, right.
And it's an opportunity to talk to people and, shake hands and have a quick word and make them smile. And it's just, it puts a smile in their face. And we can say a little quip about, hey, Eddie Andrews for governor, or make up some campaign slogan, moms need candy too, or just make them smile and have a good time. And, talk about the goodness of Iowa and goodness of America.
Definitely. And one other thing is you're always the last one to leave the room.
Yes.
I almost had you. We were at that event at Bevy's, and I was the last one to leave the room, and I thought I beat Eddie. And then I go out, and you're in the parking lot talking with a group of people. I'm like, I can't stay any later. I gotta go.
Same thing last night. We had an event. By the way, it was a great event in Lee County. And what made that event special was, a number of things, but it was named after my former colleague, General Martin Graber.
Oh, yeah.
An outstanding human being, first of all. Great leader, great Republican, great conservative, great man of faith, great husband, great father, all those things, and I sat at the table with Connie. And so we made a lot of connections. And yes, you are right. I was the last, other than the cleanup crew, we were the last people to leave. And so we got home like midnight.
Yeah, amazing. I don't think anybody's going to outwork you.
Well, and the other thing too is I feel blessed. I feel honored to serve. I don't do any of this for what the political insiders call, they have all these little terms that maybe you guys don't know about, or some of the people you guys know about, but maybe some of the listeners may not know about, but they call some people climbers, oh, here's an opportunity. Let's go for it,
Right.
And when I first got in this race, the first race, somebody said, well, yeah, he's a believer. And I thought they were talking about my faith. Well, I'm a minister. I better be a believer,
right,
a person of faith. And they started kind of chuckling. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they said, this is literally what they told me. They said, well, you're one of those kinds of people that actually believe you're going to get in politics and actually make a difference. And I'm like, that's a new story. That's a news flash. Of course I do. Like, why in the world would I spend all this time to do all this hard work and not actually make a difference? And they just kind of laughed like, oh, you just don't know how it works, right? It's going to be very hard, especially your first year. And I'm like, yeah, so let's do it, and that's when I heard the phrase for the first time. I can't take ownership for this, but somebody said, some people run for office to be something and some people run for office to do something. And I have zero interest in the first. I'm all about doing and helping and defending your rights and defending your freedom, leading on so-called controversial issues sometimes.
Let's talk about that for a minute, doing something. I know part of your personal story is that you got into politics because you wanted to make an impact on our mental health system.
Yes.
And I know that was personal to you. Would you mind sharing some of that and why and how you got into politics in the first place?
Sure. So I've always been active in my community. So that part's not an issue. I started a couple groups, Des Moines Spanish Conversation Group, almost 20 years ago. It is 20 years ago. Oh my goodness. I started a group called Mentoromics to teach kids how to code, but more from an entrepreneurial standpoint, the business aspect of it. But politics, I was just like everybody else, right? We're Monday morning quarterbacks. We look at the national news. It's talking about, DC stuff. But our story is my boy, had some issues, had some mental issues. And when he was normal, he was just a normal knucklehead kid, right? But when he would have an episode, it's like, oh my goodness, what is going on? And at some point, now, of course, my wife saw this a lot sooner than I did. I just thought he's been a clown, whatever was going on, stop. And once we realized, yeah, there's something going on, we got to see all the holes in our mental health care system. I thought, why? Who designed this system? Where's the navigation path for parents? How do we know what to do? Why is there an 8-week or 6-week or whatever week waiting period to be seen? Why do we have to trick the system to be seen? Why do we have to pull a 3-day hold to put an emergency hold when just all these little things that we learned? Why? Just so many things that were messed up. And it still never occurred to us to get involved that way in politics, but we lost my boy 6 years ago. I still don't know fully exactly what happened. But at that point, I just decided, you know what, let's kind of in his honor, let's start to fix this, put up or shut up. I've always been about solutions. And so, yeah, that was kind of my entry into politics. And,
so that was the fuel. That's a big impact.
Yes.
Big life challenge for sure.
So no matter what I do, yes, I'm involved in education. Yes, I'm involved in trying to work on our property taxes, all those things, and landowner rights. But part of me is mental health solutions. And so that will always be a part of what I want to do in politics.
How much of a change have you made as a state legislator, and how much of a bigger impact do you think you'll make as a governor?
A lot and a lot.
Okay.
So we started counting the bills that we passed since I arrived. And I believe we counted 22 was the last time, and that was before this previous session. So I would say very close to 30 bills.
Wow.
And some of them are, we think of solutions sometimes like we do in business, right? You get everybody in a room, you start a process, you look at whiteboards, you do a little brainstorming session, you get everybody there and you start working on a plan and then you do it. Well, you can do more of that as a governor, but as a state legislator, we typically work on one subset of this or one subset. For instance, we did a very small subset, but important subset this last session. I'll give you, this is probably one of the most obscure ones, right? For severe cases, people who would be committed non-voluntarily, maybe by a nurse or maybe by, maybe they're in a facility already and they say, okay, he's or she is experiencing some major issues that we can't handle here. We're going to commit this person to a hospital, for instance. And by the way, this bill came from one of my mentors, my healthcare mentors. And the problem was many of these people would be treated and then they be streeted, as they call it, where they're released by the hospital. The hospital would notify the parents or family members, their organizations. There'd be nobody to pick them up. Sometimes if you're in that situation, sometimes there have been burned bridges. And so you may or may not, or just disconnection. And so you'd have to, so they'd literally show back up a week later, or on the street somewhere, they'd be streeted effectively. And so how can we help that little segment? Well, it's interesting that we actually had to write a law for this, but give them 15 days of their medication, make sure they have that on them before they leave, make sure they do a suicide check, make sure they have the written instructions, make sure they've contacted a family member, make sure they've contacted their ASO, so that there is a plan leaving the hospital so that they don't have that revolving door and end up back here, rinse and
That
repeat.
blows me away that there wasn't already a plan. I mean, you're talking a medical center that's supposed to treat somebody and then they just release them, catch and release, kind of let them go. And
Yeah.
wow.
And so much of our mental health care system, unfortunately, is in the hand of law enforcement because, like I said, these guys are streeted. And
is that a part of our homeless problem, do you think?
that is a large part of our homeless problem. And so what we tried to do, we called it putting a stick in the spoke of the wheel, of that revolving
Right.
door, putting a foot in the door and trying to stop that revolving door.
And that was this last session?
Yes.
And that passed? Was it signed by the governor?
Signed by the governor.
Okay.
And that's, when I say a subset, that's just one small slice, right?
Right.
Then there are the other bigger ones where that most people understand easily, where we give incentives for healthcare, for psychiatrists, for mental health, behavioral health professionals to stay here in Iowa for 5 years. And of course, and I always say this because I am also a fiscal conservative, right? And the state does come out ahead even when we incentivize people to stay here 5 years. And even if they left after 5 years, we as a state are still further ahead by keeping them here that 5 years. And give them 5 years to fall in love with Iowa.
That's
put
great.
their practice down. We also put, when I first got here, I said, we went to the University of Iowa and we said, hey, how do we get more psychiatrists here in the state? You guys train most of the psychiatrists by far. And they said, well, we'd have to expand our residency. And we were like, okay, let's do it. And they said, well, that's going to cost money. Well, we could probably find some. And they said, okay, well, let's do it. Now, that wasn't the exact conversation, but it was effectively the conversation, right? And we are just now starting it's an expansion of 11. So it doesn't sound like much, but 11 new ones each year can add up.
Yeah, definitely.
And to the earlier point, we want to make sure that they're incentivized to stay here in the state of Iowa so that they don't be trained, that they're not trained and then head straight to California or somewhere. So,
And I think there was something done as well about, wasn't it tuition versus in-state versus out-of-state tuition instead of, working with kids from our state versus
Right.
trying so hard to attract out-of-state.
right. I mean, anybody who's gone to public universities in Iowa, we know there's an influx of out-of-state people. Pretty much Illinois, like 3/4 of our class seemingly was from quote unquote Chicago or external Chicago. And what we train those guys and then they go back home.
Right.
And so what that was attempting to do was to require a certain amount of people be from our state because obviously they're more likely to stay. There was a little bit of pushback, but I got to tell you, all these things add up. One of the things that I thought was going to be controversial turned out not to be. We talked about non-competes. Sorry for getting in the weeds here, but
No, you're fine.
that was just
man.
one of the pieces. The typically non-competes, right? We know how that works, right? Typically 18 months, 2 years, you can't work here. But for mental health, there was a case. We were actually helped by a court case, by the way. I believe they were in Ames. Could be, I'm not sure exactly. I believe they were in Ames, and the therapist did everything right, transferred all of her customers, her clients, I should say, to the new therapist, moved away to the Des Moines metro area, and then one by one of those clients said, I'm not getting the help I need. I'm coming to you. And like, what's a person to do? Right.
Right.
So that case went to court. And there were some guidelines that said there are certain guidelines where you can break a non-compete. One was, is there any harm? And I got to tell you, if you open if you are a halfway decent therapist and you open your doors, you will be full in 3 seconds, right? Because there's such a backlog. And so the court determined, you're going to fill that space immediately, right? And there's other things that took place, but I was walking down in, I believe, Saylorville. I'm looking at the house right now, and this person was kind of eyeing me as I was knocking doors, and kind of just standing in the backyard there. And I came back to the car to get a sign, and they said, "Are you Eddie?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And they gave me this big, huge bear hug. This happens all the time, by the way.
I bet.
It does.
I bet.
And they said, "Thank you for doing this. My business would not have been able to stay in business had you not passed this." And just, I wouldn't have been able to stay here. I probably would have had to leave the state. And it's just all these little things that happen that are critical to our mental health needs here in Iowa.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
I want to jump back to when we first met, and that was on the front lines of COVID. There were a lot of, we were battling to make sure our religious exemptions were honored.
Oh my!
Against mandates, vaccine mandates and mask mandates. And, some legislators at that time were backing down. And you were one of the few that really stood up on the front lines with us,
Yes.
when it came to the Medical Privacy and Freedom Act, and really kind of against the grain and against leadership at the time.
Right.
So tell me about that, and what did that take? I know that it had some negative effect on you, standing strong, as it often does. I feel like the caucus has come around a little bit more, and it's more conservative now, maybe.
Right. But what do you mean negative effect before I answer that?
When I say negative effect, I mean, when it comes to maybe funding and backing and things like that.
What you talking about, Willis?
I don't want to get into the weeds of that. Let's
Okay.
talk about COVID.
Yeah.
How you stood up, how important that was.
So when I ran during COVID, in 2020 was my first race.
Okay.
And so I got to see firsthand the idiocy that was going on and the propaganda.
Right.
Is that the right word?
Right.
But there was hysteria and censorship and things that didn't make sense, right? We must wear masks, which don't work. But then 3 seconds later, they do work. I'm sorry, Mr. Expert, they didn't work the last time. If we went through the science of, having something be like a mosquito, but you'd have a hole that big, right, that they could go through.
Right.
So the masks weren't stopping any virus. But we were told that they didn't work. Now they do work. And they certainly don't work while you're eating, right?
Right.
Go to a restaurant, you must wear a mask all the way up to your table. And then if magically it doesn't work anymore.
I had that conversation with a couple restaurant managers when I wouldn't put on a mask to walk 5 feet to a table.
Yeah.
It's like,
and we started just noticing the idiocy. And then when I heard Dr. Abby, remember Dr. Abby from, I think she was Story County, where she treated every person, and she was with ivermectin.
Yeah.
And
well, we had Dr. Molly James,
yes.
Dr. Bradley Myers from Okoboji Wellness. We had some great doctors, and they were persecuted. They lost their jobs.
Lost her job with a 100% success rate because it wasn't the politically approved one. And I thought, this is insane. And I've actually, and for me, it actually started with data. That was one of the pieces, I guess. Even when the vaccine came out, and I looked at it, and I was still a little naive there. I sincerely thought they were made a mistake. Okay, this is so naive. I looked at the data because I'm a data nerd, right? And I looked, you said there's a 97 or whatever % efficacy rate, and I'm looking at your data, it doesn't say that. And you used, 43,000 people, and I don't know what these numbers are now, but just for instance, but the data that I'm looking at says you only use this much. So where's the rest of the data? And I just started asking questions, and none of it made sense. And I thought, at some point, everybody needs to reread all the Orwell books, right? 1984.
Yeah.
Animal House. Right. Animal Farm. Yeah. Yeah. All those. Yeah, definitely not Animal House. That's a different. That's a different one.
Right.
And at some point, you just realize, okay, I am going to just stand on right, no matter what. And people saw that. People appreciated it. Some people didn't appreciate it. But a lot of those things that we knew and found out are now, everybody sees it now.
Right. Everybody sees it now in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
But there were those few of you guys and us on the front lines.
There's a book that I read periodically. It's called Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. It's an absolutely old book. It talks about the different traps that we fall into as human beings, right? Different frenzies and schemes and things that we fall for as human beings. And there's a statement in there, and I'm probably going to get the statement wrong, but it talks about how, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I think I hit your foot there.
I need a bigger table like Joe Rogan,
It talks about how people how they follow in crowds, but they come out one by one. And being that one by one, you think you're alone, and then you realize, oh, Oliver's got it. So-and-so's got it. Informed Choice Iowa definitely has it. Sonia has it. And you just start seeing all these other people who you can join with.
So here's a famous quote from that book. Men, it has been well said, think in herds. It will be seen that they go mad in herds, while they only recover their senses slowly and one by one.
That's the quote. Yes. Right. Yeah, I should have had my computer out. That's quick research right there by Oliver Bardwell.
Yep, I don't have a Jamie, but I got a MacBook.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's important, and I experienced that. I mean, when I stood up at our school they wanted to mask my daughter during basketball, and I remember talking to the superintendent, and he tried to make me feel like I was the only one, that was concerned, which I knew wasn't true because I'd talked to 40 other parents. We'd had a big meeting about it. And it is that I don't think people realize how powerful their voices are when they're speaking the truth and they're standing up. It's contagious. Other people are thinking the same thing. They may just not want to say anything. But once people start standing up, other people do. And before you know it, common sense will prevail, I believe.
And to your point, courage is contagious.
Yeah.
Even if they don't visibly say it or vocally say it or visibly show it, they acknowledge, oh man, that Oliver, that Eddie, they're on it, and they might say it in the car on the way home to their spouse. Right. Like, man, I really like what they had to say.
Yeah.
And then you get 2 or 3 more and then it starts to snowball.
And we went from that to, seeing what was happening in our schools when we had lockdowns, and parents, a lot of moms were looking over the shoulders of their kids.
Thank goodness for all the moms.
Yeah. Thanks goodness for those moms. But so parental rights came came up. You know, we saw the.
I actually wrote the bill on parental rights.
Yes, you led the charge on that as well. Tell us about that.
Well, I have to give it to my constituents as well. They helped with that. Barb Hecky, some of the other, so many other people.
I know Barb. Yeah, she's
I love her.
Great lady.
It initially was so simple. I believe there were like 6 paragraphs, right? You know, after the big definitions, you know, you've seen how bills are written,
Right,
but after the
right.
definition page, and I think there were really only like 6 paragraphs, very short paragraphs. It effectively said that parents have the fundamental right, the key phrase, fundamental right, to direct the children's education, their medical well-being, their associations, and I forget what the other ones were in the initial bill. And first it started on party lines in subcommittee and committee. And we talked to one of the strong, well-respected Democrats at the time in the Iowa House, Mary Wolf, and she made a quick suggestion. Boom, easy suggestion. We got all the Democrats on board on the House side. Immediately, it went to the Senate, and you would have thought we were. It's like, I don't know what happened. Immediately, the knives came out. It's like, what are you doing? Giving parents fundamental rights? What? Well,
Right.
no, they really already have them, and we're just trying to codify. And the other thing too on that, and I didn't really say this up front, but we saw what was happening in other states, and we wanted to preempt that. Things that you see now, like in California, where if you don't quote unquote affirm somebody's, your child's gender
identity.
dysphoria,
Yeah.
then they can take your child. And we saw craziness that was forming in other states. And so both of those things together were good enough were a reason for that bill. And so we ended up fighting for literally months on that bill. We all during the off session, it got stopped, and then we had to in the Senate, and we had to work. Alliance Defending Freedom came in. I mean, we were talking with lawyers, and their lawyers were arguing with their lawyers. We got it down to one word, literally one word, and we refused to budge, and they refused to budge. And so we said, you know what, we're just going to break and come back.
What was the word?
I believe it's otherwise.
Okay.
So in law, and by the way, I almost memorized that entire chapter. That was probably one of the best things that actually happened, was not passing, because ultimately I learned a lot more. But effectively what it would have done is it said, what law takes precedence. So if you have a law that says no fish on Friday only, and then I pass another law the next day that says you can have turkey, well, the newer law takes precedent over the old law.
Okay.
And then when you say unless otherwise noted or something like that.
Okay.
And so the word otherwise would effectively put our law in second place. And it's like, no, that's the whole reason we're doing it.
Right. Right.
And we refused. What they were saying, well, you know, we've got all this case law, you know, we just don't want to mess with that. I'm like, no, we really need to make sure that parents are in charge first. Fundamental right, and that's the key phrase. And so we eventually won. It ended up being as part of the governor's
Omnibus bill.
Yeah, the
Education.
governor's Parents' Rights Bill, or Parents' Bill of
Right.
Rights Bill.
Right.
Like Ronald
Parental
Reagan said,
rights.
you can get a lot done if you don't care who gets the credit. And so we moved our bill into the governor's bill.
Well, and one of the things I remember too is that there were all these little bills that were coming through the House, whether it was transparency.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you were talking about other states. And so we had kids going to school as Sally,
Yes.
a girl, dressed as a girl, and then getting to school, changing their clothes, dressing as a boy, being called Sam, and not being their parents not being told. And I remember testifying at that subcommittee, and this is the safe space. This is, we got to protect the kids from their crazy parents, sort of thing. And it just blew me away.
Like some super woke person, and I don't like to just say teachers, because that you when you say teachers, that just kind of sullies all of them.
Right.
But
right.
this one or two super woke people who are teachers, right, happen to be teachers, think they are now the protector of this child, and they know more than you, who've raised them, fed them, clothed them, given them direction for all of their life. But now, they share a different political opinion, and so they're going to hide this from the parents. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Oh,
I
man.
couldn't believe that was even an issue.
And they were proud of that. And so
I remember actually sitting down with a counselor, and they were telling me how the Republicans messed everything up, and now you had to make sure if your daughter wants to be called a nickname, that you have to fill out some paperwork and everything. And I said, I think that's if it's a name of a different gender. If it's just a shortened version of their name, I don't think that's the thing. But I've read the legislation. I think it's if they want to change their gender, they have to, you have to have parental permission to do that.
And to think, like, I guarantee you, none of us thought that we'd be working on legislation like this, defining what a woman is, like defining what gender is. I was going to say, I don't even think most of the Democrats, I don't think any of the Democrats that are in the House right now in the state of Iowa or the Senate, I don't think any of them believed this 8 years ago.
Oh, no.
10 years ago.
No.
Like, and now it's like, that's their thing.
No, I mean, my previous opponent, I had a conversation out with him on the street about it, and he had grandkids at the time, and he didn't believe in any of it. We got kids in school, my wife and I, we don't believe in that. We don't want them reading those books. We don't, all this gender stuff. And then he stands and cries on the debate floor during the debate on the gender identity bill, removing it from the Civil Rights Code. Let's talk about that real quick.
Okay.
How important was that? Why did we do it? The civil rights redefined to protect children in the Constitution.
Gender
identity, removing it from the Civil Rights Code. Why was that done? Why was it so important? Well,
it was critically important for a number of reasons. One, these kinds of issues, I did say that we needed to do this in the first round.
Right.
I'm a believer that instead of having 7 fights, let's have one big one.
Right.
And when we passed the Save Girl Sports bill, we all championed that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but every Democrat that was elected voted against that. I think every Democrat voted against that. Now,
I believe you're right. Yeah. I know our Democrats voted against it.
Yes. Yeah. Think about that. What is the purpose of Title IX sports if you're going to have a guy with an XY chromosome compete against girls with XX chromosomes, right? Just because he's confused or has an issue, we don't always have to accept that. That's on him.
And you take that a step further, and they're not only competing, which is terrible, they're sharing their bathroom, locker room, and shower room.
And this actually happens in Iowa. I'll get back to the direct answer, but many people didn't believe this was happening. We had several swim teams where you got a guy, and I do say guy, with full package out there showering in a female shower room. And what about the girls feeling uncomfortable? Like, really? We're gonna let this happen in Iowa?
Well, DMAC, my friend's daughter was in the culinary arts program walks into her changing facility, 40-year-old naked male there who decided he was a woman 2 months before.
Constituent of mine.
Completely intact. And they made her mother and father feel like they were the perpetrators.
Yep.
And he was the victim, that they didn't want him in her changing room.
I know that case well. They live in my my current constituency.
Your current constituency, yeah.
But so I knew this day was coming, right? We passed Save Our Girl Sports. By the way, even though, let me just say this too, because one of the assumed nominees for the other party now says, oh yeah, I would support that. Well, he was supporting those people that were banging on our doors and cussing us out. And we had to have, during that vote, we had to actually have troopers escort us across the hall, right? They were causing fights, starting fights. And, you know, if they were Republicans, by the way, they would have called that an insurrection. But somehow the news media didn't report on any of that.
Yeah.
But
just go to my Facebook page. You'll see it. We had so much video of it. It was insane.
And, you know, he was supporting them. But now he understands, and most people should understand, it's a 90-10 issue. I mean, and the issue.
And didn't it go from like 80-20 during, or 76 something, and then Trump was elected? Now people feel like they can speak out a little more on it. Now it's 90-10.
Yeah. And part of the reason is, Democrats have daughters too.
Right.
And they know my daughter's going to be different than my boy, no matter how much left sauce they drink. It's their daughter's always going to be different than their boy, and they don't want their daughters playing against other boys. And so while the elected officials, Democrats, certainly bought into that, the Democrats have daughters too, and they want to make sure that those daughters are protected.
And all you have to do is have a daughter. I mean, I coached soccer for 18 years, helped grow our local program, and I coached boys and girls, and it was just depending on which one of my kids was playing. And when I coached the girls, we had a killer team. But by the time you get up into high school, we would scrimmage the boys, and it would always tick me off that my team was technically better, but the boys would beat them because they were just faster, stronger, bigger. Now, when they're in, you know, elementary school and early junior high, and they haven't gone through puberty yet, my girls would trounce those boys. But once they go through puberty, the boys are just, it doesn't matter the skill level. They're just hammering them because they're so much more physically, you know, and it's frustrating as a parent and a coach, but the reality of biology.
Right. And so I knew we're going to have this other fight later on. And I was pushing for, yes, while we are passing the Save Our Girl Sports bill, we still had it in the code. We still had a protected class in the code. That's another long story.
Well, and I would talk with the leadership at that time. Oh no, there's no way we can do that. We're not going to be able to pull that out of the code. We'll just keep putting Band-Aids on it.
And we actually had good people, and I won't call their names because I don't want to put them in a seemingly bad light, but who have served in the legislature, who are no longer in the legislature, and they voiced, man, you really need to take that out, but I don't think you can. I don't think I will ever do it in our lifetime, because as Calvin Coolidge noted, and he's right, he said it's always better to stop bad legislation than to even advance good legislation. I have that quote on my desk.
Interesting.
And because they know the power of inertia. Once it's in the code, it's hard to get out. Even though you knew this was the right thing to do. We're literally saying save girl sports. The willpower of enough people prohibited us from taking it out then. But guess what? I knew we were going to have this fight because the lawsuit started coming. And
Yeah.
so now you're saying, oh, you can't have girls and boys participate in these sports, or boys participate in girls sports, but you still have a protected class. And I know I'm going to get in trouble with the civil rights people because they don't like me to say it this way, but a civil right, if it's in the civil rights code, it's kind of like a super right, right?
Right.
We all have right to housing, but the idea was to protect the innate rights, like things or the innate things and descriptors, right? Male, your race, gender, all those things.
Right. Immutable characteristics.
Immutable. Thank you.
Yeah.
Not changeable ones.
On day to day, depending on
Yes.
how you feel, and there's no medical diagnosis
Right.
or anything.
And so we knew that was going to be an issue. And sure enough, the lawsuits came, and that was what they kept citing. Well, you say you can't do this, but we got a super right here. In fact, again, the civil rights groups would not prefer me to say it that way, but
And we've talked about mental health reform.
mm-hmm.
One of the challenges around the gender identity issue, I believe, is that we've got this affirm and assist idea that has infiltrated our medical system. So how do we combat that? I talked to a psychiatrist one day, and he said, I'm a unicorn in the industry in Iowa. And this is in Iowa. He said most psychiatrists, a kid will come to him and say, hey, I feel like I'm the opposite gender, or I have gender dysphoria, self-diagnosed. And they'll just assist them in that. They'll just acknowledge that, let them self-diagnose, where he actually talks to them about the underlying conditions, works on the underlying conditions, helps them, integrate with themselves. How do we get to a point, can we in Iowa, where that's the norm, where it's like, hey, let's not just, like if somebody came in and said, I'm fat, and they were 102 pounds and they were anorexic, you wouldn't say, oh yeah, you're fat, let's get you on Ozempic or a diet pill or something. How do we get back to reality in the medical system in Iowa? Well, I know it's illegal now. They can't transition them, but they can socially transition them, and they can do all these, or send them to another state or whatever.
So it's about changing attitudes and culture and rightness. So you've already suggested one of the solutions is making sure they can't do damage. Right. Remember the good old oath, Hippocratic oath that they all take: first, do no harm.
First, do no harm.
Well, let's try not to cut off perfectly good body parts because someone has an issue.
Right. Or give them drugs that'll cause them kidney issues and liver issues and bone issues. And
right. So we've done most of the first part,
which was a tough battle getting that bill passed.
Oh my goodness.
To protect minors.
Right. And perfectly intelligent doctors, seemingly, many of them in our University of Iowa, for instance. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is wrong with these people?
And then I have a family member who's a OB, and I remember showing him the legislation and his response. And he's more of an independent, middle of the road, maybe even more liberal leaning. But he had said, I don't see anything wrong with this, except it should be 20 years old, or 25 years
Somebody
old.
said that.
Yeah, because your part of your brain doesn't fully develop until you're like 25, and people shouldn't be making lifelong altering decisions before that's developed.
You're right. I actually got some supporters because of that bill. There was I won't say any names. There were actually a couple cases very similar. So whichever one you think I'm talking about, don't assume.
All right.
Okay. But one young lady went to my school, or Johnson, and they said, hey, I'm 17. I'm turning 18 in such and such time. I'm going to register on my birthday. I will not be voting for you because you hate trans people or whatever because of this legislation. And ... I wrote her Don't ask me why. Sometimes we write, thank you for your comments. I see it differently. Here's why. But this one, I kind of went a little longer. It was probably a page. And I talked about data. And this is a person that you don't do the moral argument. I just kind of perceive that.
Right.
Here's the data. And at that time, it was after WPATH was found, the Standards Organization for Gender Dysphoria had found to be fraudulent, effectively. And then this was also about the time when Sweden and England had seen the first real 20 or 30 year studies, and they saw how horribly damaging this was to people.
And they started rolling it back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't even roll it back. They stopped it immediately. The most, and I hate to use their phrase, but you know what I mean. The most so-called gender affirming country in the world stopped it immediately. Like, we will not do any more gender transitions on kids effective immediately after they saw the data. Now, you and me, we don't need to see the data. It's common sense, right? But they had been so indoctrinated that they needed to see the data. And immediately, this young lady, went through all this and said, well, I wasn't expecting a result or a comment back. I'm not quite sure what I was expecting, but let me think about this. Got her mother involved. We ended up meeting with them.
Wow.
Talking about different things, and came down to the Capitol. And now this is just one issue, one person. Well, two. We met at a coffee shop. And the mother said, I can't believe I'm in green with a Republican. Like, this is wild. You're actually kind of making sense. And so we went through that. The next thing I know, I get an invitation for the graduation party.
Wow.
And on and on and on. And they're great people, right? But we disagreed on this, and they really saw my view and why this is important.
Well,
because
you're
really
her life, right?
And you're really kind of harming that child. You're not saving the child.
Right.
Like,
and that's what I was telling Representative Collins. He was here.
Oh yeah,
recently.
I like Taylor.
Yeah, such a great young guy. It's all about, for me, it's about compassion. It's about true compassion. And I think that if you have the conversation and the dialogue with that, I hope that people see it like that family did with you.
Yes.
That it was really out of compassion and truth.
Right.
Here's the actual stats. Here's the data. It's not bigotry. It's not whatever. I just care about these kids and these people.
Right. And and to them, I'm not speaking for them, but I think they would say, they didn't turn into, I don't know,
MAGA.
Yeah. They're not wearing any red hats.
Right.
But they, oh boy, or Ted Cruz, right? They didn't turn into Ted Cruz. Let's just say him.
Right.
But they did see the point, and they understood that their initial impression of me was incorrect, and they saw my heart and why I wanted to help kids. And I think they just moved their position on that issue.
Well, and that's one of the biggest issues, I think, facing our society right now anyway. And that's one of the things I've always admired about you, is your ability to disagree with someone on an issue, yet have that intelligent and compassionate dialogue, right, and open those doors and build those bridges. I think that's really what we need as a governor.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
We were talking about that the other day, and I think part of it's that's just who I am. I want to know why we disagree. Let's have this conversation. Right. But another reason, one of the reasons, is we didn't all come to conservatism the same way. Some people were concerned about maybe who I'm married to, they're not MAGA red hat wearing people, or some of my families. I'm like, guys, just look at the demographics. I grew up on the east side of Des Moines. I'm a black guy. I don't know if you know that or not. Could you tell? A lot of melanin in my skin, right? And so historically, my entire family, Democrats, we have,
How do you manage that?
When you run for office, they say, well, write your friends and family letters. It's like they're all Democrats, right? And I don't think people see the strength that it takes, kind of like the quote we were just talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. The strength that is required to look at that and say, hey, guys, I think we've been looking at this wrong. This doesn't make any sense. And they see that I can relate to them because I was them. I was there. I understand that part. And they see me disagreeing with them, knowing that I'm not dismissing them. I am having a dialogue, just kind of like how we have it at our kitchen table, our dining room table. We have disagreements at our, I don't know if you know, you could probably gather that between my family. We do have those discussions, and yes, we get loud, a little louder than here, but we are passionate, but there's never an indication of, I think you're stupid or you're crazy. We just see it differently. And I think people see that when we have these disagreements and dialogues, and they're willing to listen, because I may not know exactly where they are, but I kind of understand where they're coming from. And so once we start talking about the issue, then and get all the personal garbage out, or don't even bring it in, we can have that discussion. And I think data wins, results win.
How do you approach that? Do you, when one of your family members makes a negative comment about Republicans or conservatives or an issue, what's your response? Do you ask them to tell you more? Do you proceed with curiosity?
Ask questions.
Yeah.
But I sometimes just ask the question, why? So
Okay.
Tell me more about that.
Okay.
And usually, I don't know about usually, but very often the second or third, tell me more about that, whys, you realize a lot of it's emotion. There was a young lady who introduced me. We were at a black event. I'll just say it like that, a traditionally black event. And so this lady said, they were introducing me, and they said, hey, this is my friend Eddie. He's a Republican, but he's a good one. And I'm like that's a bad thing, right? And so we talked about it, and I said, why would you say that? And it's like, and then she says, this is her words. She says, Eddie, I'm troubled by this. She said, I took some survey that showed me my political leanings. I answered questions, and it said that I'm a Republican. And I don't know how to deal with that. And I said, just be you. You are obviously you're a person of faith. You're a person that values right and wrong, traditional family values. You traditionally like smaller government. And I'm like, that is republicanism. And what a lot of people, including certainly her, had been led to believe, because they don't like this person or that person, that is the party. And instead of the idea behind why people vote the way they do.
Yeah, I think it comes back to values, and I think people have to realize, okay, these are the values that I have. These are the values of the party. Yeah, maybe I don't like that guy's personality or that person's personality, but at least I kind of know, where the values lie.
Right. And for her, it was we had the conversation.
You
of course,
probably had TDS, right?
We laughed, and because I know where she's talking about, right?
Right.
And so this other person who's just watching this engagement, like she just met, or they just met me, and so they're just watching us go back and forth. And I said, you just work on that. It's okay. It's okay to be a conservative, even if you've been a Democrat all your life, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So as you look forward to the next legislative session, what are your top priorities?
Well, it's going to be an interesting legislative session because, I'm still running for governor, but I'm still a legislator.
Right.
And some of the things that I want to do in legislation may not happen. And so we're going to be doing those, saving those for our gubernatorial run. But look, the idea is to get them done. One of those is landowner rights. I think that's a big one for me. It is the issue in certain parts of our state. And let me just say for the record, I am a selfie taker. There's a rumor going around that I take pictures.
I learned that from you. I try to do it as often as I can now.
Yes. And I pulled out my phone. Where my phone is, right here. And when I pull up on my albums, or now they call them collections. Thank you, iPhone, for changing that. I find 42 different events, right?
My gosh.
That's me with some landowners. That's me and Doyle, and Steve King, I think, is there. And this one here, that's an event. That's me. All different suits, by the way, different ties. Ooh, they're feeding us there. Right? You get the point.
Yep.
So I'm only making that point to say I'm the only guy in this race who stood from the very beginning on landowner rights, farmer rights. I was in Lyon County and O'Brien County and Plymouth County, and we'd say down here more landowner rights, but they're saying farmers' rights is how they were phrasing it up there. And I got to tell you, I won't say I got flack, but I did get some people that were curious in my district, my current district, because I represent Ankeny, Southwest Ankeny, Johnston, Crocker, Saylorville area, part of Urbandale.
No pipelines going through.
Not a lot of farmland.
No.
And they're like, Eddie, why are you so involved in this? And I thought, well, first of all, there's a little thing called the Constitution, Declaration of Independence. We just celebrated 249 years of Declaration, right? And we all know the phrase, right? Everybody said it: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, or as Joe Biden would say, life, liberty, and you know the thing, right?
Right.
But there are volumes written about the last phrase there, but it includes property rights, right? They couldn't call it property. How do you say property without saying property? Because southern states wanted slaves as property. So how do you say it? Or that was one of the things they struggled with. And the response, the other part of that is it's our job as people in government to protect your rights. Property rights, literally, it is the simplest thing that we can do is protect your property rights. And so I've been since day one on their side. And I reminded some of my Metro people that if we set the precedent and they can take your farmland, then they can certainly take your backyard and anything else they want for a non-utility group. And let me also say, since I'm talking about it, I don't have to believe all your voodoo science. I don't have to believe all that. But the biggest issue is eminent domain abuse. You can be pro corn, which I am, pro sustainable aviation fuel, pro all of those things, and still 100% protect landowner rights, whether that's making the routes flexible, whether it's And that's even if you allow, even if you are a fan of that whole
carbon capture.
Yeah, that's
no, and I know a lot of people appreciate that about you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pivot here a little bit. I want to bring some questions from our community, people who have stood with us in the fight for freedom and parental rights and truth in public policy. So these questions are from our Iowans for Freedom members and Patreon members. If you're not part of that inner circle yet, join us at patreon.com/Oliver Bardwell. Even a free membership gives you access to exclusive behind-the-scenes interviews, live updates from the Capitol, and every call to action we put out. So join us there. So David, he was our first member. He wants to know, do you believe we should enforce stronger border security at the state level? That's interesting. And I'm going to kind of combine. He had like 3 questions. Do you support removing illegal immigrants in Iowa, even if they work, pay taxes, which I'm not sure how they would do if they're illegal, and don't use government benefits? And then what role is Iowa currently playing in helping or hindering ICE and removing illegal immigrants? So that immigration issue is the essence of this question.
Okay, so he may not know it, or maybe he does, but there's a lot in that statement.
There is. Yeah.
So first of all and foremost, right, we should be not only a nation of laws, but we should be a state of laws. And at some point, you just have to say, right is right, wrong is wrong. If you are a quote unquote good person who came here illegally when the doors were open and nobody's watching effectively, then start over. Right? No one is hindering anyone from starting over. So I've co-pastored a Hispanic congregation, right? And it's impossible. It's impossible to be in a Hispanic congregation of any decent size without having a family member or someone themselves that are involved in immigration some sort of way, right? It's almost impossible. And
right,
so
right.
I've worked with people trying to, so this isn't just hypothetical, right? This is something that I've worked with, working with people to assist them going back. Sometimes going back to Mexico or going back to the other places where they came from, writing a letter to help them as they're coming back the right way, right? So this isn't just something that I've, have heard about or read about. This is something that I've advocated for.
How much success have you had in that?
I think almost every case.
Really?
Yeah. There's one.
The legal status, they go back and then they come through the front door,
Mm-hmm.
and you write a letter of recommendation and then somehow help them through the process.
Right. So there's one where we are, I haven't checked the update right now, but I mean, typically and most people probably don't even know what the process is, but you file your application. And by the way, we do need a complete renovation of our.
We do.
Okay. But at any rate,
yeah.
But right now, and that is a longer conversation, but you effectively file your application. It generally requires you to go back to your country of origin and stay there while they review your application. And then at some point they have the interview. If it's a married couple, maybe one is a citizen, maybe one's not. Did they marry for the right reason? Are they marrying to get citizenship, or do they, and they need people who know them to speak for them or against them.
Right.
Obviously, if I were speaking against them, they probably wouldn't involve me, right?
Right.
And then you say what they've done, and then they they come back effectively through the front door and apply for their green card status. So you don't have to live in fear if you go back and do things the right way.
That's really interesting that you say that. And I'm going to share this interview with a friend of mine. He has a friend who's Vietnamese that I think came over when he was 8 or 9. His parents brought him illegally.
Sorry.
And he's been here 20 years, working citizen, etc. And he's actually going back to do just what you were talking about, because he was afraid that if he was deported, that it would be a much harder process for him to. And that's my secondhand knowledge of it.
Right.
But that makes sense. That's interesting. You know, did you see that statement from Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was on The View? They asked him about immigration because he's an immigrant.
Right.
And he didn't answer it the way they wanted him to. He said, well, you know, when I was 20 years old, I love this country. They accepted me. I came through legally, etc. He said, you know, when you're coming to this country as an immigrant, you're a guest. And when I go to somebody's house and I'm a guest, I make my bed. I clean up after myself. I do my best to show my gratitude. And he said, there's too many people that aren't doing that. You know, they want to come in and burn the flag and do all these things. He said, you have to do it the right way.
I remember that. I didn't remember exactly what he said, but I do remember that incident where he didn't give the Hollywood answer.
He didn't give the Hollywood answer. And, you know, we have DACA. I don't know if you saw my interview with Jose Reyes, but
I did.
Patriot, incredible young guy. I mean, just loves our country.
Yes.
But he's stuck in that loop and he can't find a way out. Every 2 years he has to reapply for his work permit or whatever. It's an interesting battle.
I will have to revisit that interview.
Yeah, if you would.
Yeah, maybe
great.
I'll give him a call.
That would be great. I'd love to connect you two. The next thing, which is huge, I mean, this was number one when I was knocking doors. Lonnie says, can we eliminate property taxes or at least remove them from people who have paid off their homes? So property taxes, I know you guys wanted to get something done this last session, but it's become such a complicated issue. What are we doing?
Okay,
I mean,
so let me just...
This is going to be a longer than standard interview, just so people know.
let me separate some of these, right, if I can. So when you say you guys, I'm assuming
I'm talking the
legislature.
Legislature. Okay. You're going to be back at your desk.
So when you say you guys, I'm hearing the two Ways and Means chairs,
right?
Who, by the way, are good people, right? Well, one is soon not to be the Ways and Means chair. And their bills, which are increasingly better, I think they're on their third version. Typically what they do is release a version, get feedback from the cities and the counties and business people and homeowners, and how would this affect you? Take that input, write another one, then write another one. I think they're on their third one, and it's better. But it's still challenging. And so I'd like to separate that from my ideas.
Yeah,
so,
because I know that your ideas are a little more radical.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm more of the go big or go home crowd.
Yeah.
Right now, you're 100% correct on the difficulty, the complexity, because it's like a Jenga board, as I like to say it. You know, if you start changing this piece of the property tax puzzle, then you got to change this piece. You can't. And let me back up and say this, because this isn't fully understood. The state really doesn't collect property taxes. Those are counties, cities, and schools. And so when we're talking about changing, we're really putting change on them.
Right.
And so, so the state can't eliminate, change without changing those entities that actually do the actual taxing. So if you have TIF funds, you have the schools, people forget that schools are a taxing agency, right?
Right. It's like 50% of our dollar.
Yes.
Correct.
And they can do their own bonds. They can do their own levies. So what's currently in front of the legislature, that legislation is complicated because the whole structure is complicated. We jokingly and almost not jokingly say that there's only really one or two people in the Iowa House who fully understand the school formula. It's complicated. It really is complicated. And if you start changing that, then what about TIF? What if you're a business owner who has gotten guaranteed funds based upon TIF funds? And we change that. Well, then how does that affect your economic growth project in the middle of, say, Johnston, right? Or Waukee? And well, let's check that. What about the rollbacks? Can we get rid of the rollbacks? What is that? Without going digging fully into the weeds, let me just say, well, I will say one more thing, because just saying it's complicated doesn't always, satisfy people. If you make a change, the current Ways and Means, I'm not speaking for them. Trust me, I'm not speaking for them. They are very capable for speaking for themselves. But the way I understand it is, when they make a model change, the people who give them the model, what does this do? What kind of revenue do we have? How does this affect our revenue? They have to build those models. Someone has to build those models. And so you make that change, and then they can really see how that works.
So the reason it didn't get done last session was because they were making the change, but the models had to be built, and it takes a lot longer than just a few weeks to do that. So I assume they're working on it. Yes. And then that'll be revisited next session.
Right. And yeah, if it were like a 2-day change, that'd be great, but that's not a 2-day change.
So we're going to see a change. And what shape do you think it'll take?
I would be, if I were a betting man, I'd say we're on revision 3. I'd say it doesn't get done until probably revision 5.
Really?
Yeah. I think there's a lot, and they're working now. So I don't mean to underestimate the amount of work that they are doing, because I know how much of a challenge it is for me on my completely radical idea.
What's your completely radical idea?
Okay, let me just say this too. One of our staff members, we share house staff. There's 4 staff groups in the Capitol. The House Republican staff, sharp people. I would put them up against almost anybody. They are sharper than sharp. And the one that deals with property taxes says, Eddie, I'm looking for you. Hey, are we going to talk about property taxes again, Eddie? Yes, ma'am. Right. Yes, we are. And so my radical idea is that I think we can actually eliminate or significantly change our property taxes for a number of reasons. And there's, I would say, 3 primary ways to do that. We actually have we're actually going to make a presentation at some point. I said August. My team said, aren't you campaigning? Can we push that back a little as you're doing all these other things? But
who are you making the presentation to?
We're just going to have a press conference, and
okay.
So it's coming up. We're
right.
But I will say that we did talk to many of the people that that are respected tax authorities. While one of them certainly cannot give an endorsement, Iowans for Tax Relief certainly said they were pleased with us how did they phrase it? Because they don't want to look like they're endorsing or anything like that, or
Right.
do we want to give the impression that they are? And but they issued some positive statement, or allowed us to issue a positive statement about them being pleased with some of the direction that we were taking and bringing the topic up to.
Well, give us a hint about the direction you're taking.
So the easy one that most people think about, well, that just means, Eddie, that you're going to have to raise income tax or sales tax,
Right.
4 or 5 points, and then to do this. Well, then you can't do that. That's one option. You can, option 2 would be to really focus on why do you even have an assessor's office if you don't need to, if you don't need that office, if you're eliminating property taxes or reducing them, why do you even need an assessor's office, right? Times 99 counties.
Right.
So if, let's just say, take a number, $500,000 times 99. It's not a lot of money, but
well, that's all. What is that? 45 million, something like that.
So
50 million.
So again, that's chump change compared to. But even if you think about it though, even if you didn't do anything differently, you have Zillow that does a pretty decent job, and all these real estate tools that do a decent job effectively for free. Do I really need a whole office to assess and surprise us every year?
Yeah. I was talking to our assessor, and he said they could take on some of the neighboring counties and do, what is it, a 20D, I think Collins was saying, where you can consolidate services. Yeah. That's something we definitely should be doing. I mean, I don't understand why we need 99 counties to do everything, especially when some of these counties are smaller than some of our big cities. Right. And as I mentioned before, I'm running for county supervisor here in Dallas County.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think you're going to do it.
Yes. So when you're governor, I'll be county supervisor.
I love it.
We'll have to get together on these tax issues.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I guess, and to some extent, there's no purpose of having a press release if we say everything, but
right.
The idea is that there are several ways to restructure what we have and not rent from the government even after you own our home forever.
Yeah, it's difficult for people. I mean, it's a burden for sure.
And not lose services. That's the other thing.
We have to find a balance. How do we maintain decent services and still be able to stay in our homes?
There was one guy that said, well, then you must not like fire.
Fire trucks.
Yeah.
Donna is asking about wind turbines.
What about them?
Well, let's see. What's your position on wind turbines? Many of us find them unsightly and ineffective. Can they be removed or stopped?
So Warren Buffett, who many of you guys know is his company, Berkshire Hathaway, owns Mid-American Energy. Boy, I wish I had his exact quote, but it's effectively, now he didn't say it this way, but it's like green energy versus green energy, right? ALC green energy versus dollar green energy. And his quote was something akin to, if there were no subsidies, we wouldn't be in this business, because the biggest subsidy or the biggest energy that we get out of this is dollars. Yeah. So it makes no sense from a energy perspective without us subsidizing the often unsightly windmills.
Yeah, I was at a conservative energy caucus or event, and the economist who was talking about how great.
I was there.
Yeah. When he was asked if it wasn't subsidized, would we do it? He said, absolutely not. It doesn't make any sense if it's not subsidized.
Yes, I was there. Representative, we'd already talked about that. Representative Sherman, who's also running.
Right. He
asked
about
about that
question.
That was one of those conferences I literally could not. I had to leave early. And I'm not that guy that just leaves early. It was just so much propaganda.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I just like, I'm not even just going to stay here. All the legislative people, God bless you. Here you go. I just have stuff better to do. It was that bad. It was horrible.
Yeah. Now, this is
yes.
an important question. Will you fight for medical freedom again if another pandemic hits? And I guess around that,
shortly.
Emergency powers, governor emergency powers.
Yeah.
We try to act like our government didn't shut things down, but they did.
Revisionist history.
We lost thousands of businesses because of the shutdowns and the mandates and all those things. Would you be okay with limiting those emergency powers for the governor?
Actually, yes, was the short answer, but we actually came in to I had actually run on emergency powers.
Okay.
Reducing them. A lot of us did. And boy, oh boy, I better be careful slightly how to say this, but because kind of the gentleman's rule or ladies' rule is we don't share typically what goes on in our caucus, and we kind of honor that.
Sure.
But I will say this, we were presented with, we knew in my very first caucus that was not going to be passing. I'll just say it that way. And I was like, I looked at my neighbors like, I just ran on this. What do you mean? We're not going to do anything on emergency powers and people are shutting down. And there's a little story, and I will be very generous with this story, but the governor, who I believe has been a phenomenal governor in so many ways, don't get me wrong. I think she ranks right up there at the very top.
For sure. Yeah.
All the way. I mean, she's right up there with Kirkwood in my view.
Right.
Civil War governor of Iowa. However, there's been a number of major issues, and that was one of them where we disagreed. I don't think there's any reason to keep unlimited emergency powers for an extended period of time. We understand the whole use of the phrase emergency. Yeah, there are times when an emergency happens and you can't wait for things to happen.
Yeah, flooding, for instance, or something natural disaster.
Right. And even though, yes, there has been, to your point, revisionist history. Oh, we never shut down. Yeah, we did. Oh, we never did. Yes, we did. We may have been one of the first states to come to our senses and correct some of that. But yeah, there were businesses harmed. And how can I say this? So we don't really have a freedom caucus at least not an official one, but we have freedom fighters or whatever we call ourselves today. And there were a group of us who had filed emergency power legislation. And like I said, we were told that was going nowhere. When you get a bill, and I'm sorry for getting in the weeds, but maybe it's necessary for this story, but when you file a bill, eventually you get a number. You check it out, and once LSA, Legislative Services, drafts it the way you want it, you can make your modifications. Once you do that, it gets assigned to a committee, but even before that, it gets assigned a number. Prior to that, it's just a ghost bill. It's just nobody knows about it but you and Legislative Services Agency. And then you release it, gets sent to the back office, they give it a number. Well, the reason I bring that up is we had some legislation that it didn't have a number. It's just a ghost bill. You can say, you have this legislation, but nobody knows it. Nobody can find it. They do a search, it doesn't exist, right? And
interesting.
Yeah. I've had a bill or two. Ghosted. Doesn't exist.
Ghosted.
I've had somebody tell me, Representative, this piece of paper is never going to see the light of day. Doesn't happen. Didn't happen.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but at any rate, this one was about emergency powers. And we collectively elected or sent, I'm not sure she considered an election, but we sent
Sandy Salmon. I was just thinking that, yeah.
Now Senator Sandy Salmon,
Yeah,
but she was in the House at that point. And she represented us, and she had a conversation with the governor. Hope this isn't breaking news, but
right.
It's well away. And long story short, trust me, long story short, said if you don't open businesses up, we're gonna have a press conference tomorrow, and XYZ, and that next day, things open back up.
That's great. Yeah.
That's the very short version of it.
So it takes good people standing up, and then her seeing that there was support for it,
right,
and a need for it because she wants to do the right thing and support her legislators as well.
Right.
And then you hear from your constituents and it filters to her.
Right. And I think now Senator Salmon was the right person to do that, right, because, she's sweet as a kitten, but fierce as all get out.
Retired
and I think
Navy.
Marine. Yeah.
Marine.
Yeah.
Oh, Marine.
Yeah.
I thought she was Navy. Marine.
She is the sweetest person ever.
Yeah, I've worked with her on many things. So,
but yes, getting back to the answer.
To the answer.
I am 100% okay with limiting emergency powers. I think there's several ways you can look at that, where we had competing ones. I think the one that I was proposing was to allow the legislative council, after 15 days, be involved in that. The legislative council, for those of you guys don't know, it's like a smaller group. It includes leadership and 2 or 3 other people. So like the speaker, the majority leader, the speaker pro tem, and on the House side, and then the president and the majority leader in the Senate, and maybe 1 or 2 others. And so 10 or 15 people would be involved in anything. Let's just say we're out of session and there's an emergency. Do you really need all 150 people back for an emergency? We're talking to make a decision. Well, if there's an emergency after so many days, maybe they would be involved. And then also the criteria of what would be involved. And so there's a couple of ways we looked at it. We had somewhat competing versions, but the point is we disagreed that you should be under an emergency powers for years.
Right.
It kind of dilutes the phrase emergency.
Yeah, exactly. Give you enough time to evaluate the situation and then move forward. I'm going to pick and choose just a couple more here. Let's see. Eric, you've spoken about improving educational outcomes for Iowa students. What's your plan to move us forward, and how do we address the ongoing school funding challenges?
Okay, so part of my plan is called Back to Number One. The reason I chose that phrase, we probably are going to name it, but rename it. But as of right now, that's what it's called. Back to Number One. When I was a kid, education in Iowa ranked number 1 almost every year. We were in the top 5 almost every year. Maybe a bad year would be number 3 or 5, but we always appreciated that we were rated number 1. Now we don't publish those numbers. You know why? Because we're not even close. And part of it is we bought in, I say we collectively have bought into not me personally, just to be clear, but we as a state and Department of Education have bought into the No Child Left Behind by George Bush, the Common Core President Obama. And one of the side effects of that is we have gone from teacher-heavy education to administration-heavy education. If you can imagine a graph here, this is 1970. These are administrators. These are teachers, right? That graph has changed. We now have more administrators than teachers. Think about that. So every teacher that you see in a classroom, there's 1 point something else times that teacher.
Wow.
Sitting in some office somewhere.
And that's in public school, though, not in private school.
Yeah. And another side effect is, and I'm not against administrators, right? We need them for certain things, but typically an administrator is going to make multiples of what that teacher's making.
Right.
So getting back, the last part of that was funding issues. Well, if we redirect most of the resources back to the teachers in the classrooms, not sending spreadsheets to DC, you refocus a lot of the funding as well when you do that. Part of that would be a full examination. I think we've got a study that's already started, but a full study of how to remove Common Core. We have to gut that, in my opinion, from the root, and get back to really local control.
Right.
I know we use that, throw that phrase around a lot, but almost by definition, yes, we call it Iowa Core, but it's Common Core. That is by definition DC control.
What's so bad about Common Core for somebody that's listening that hears that all the time but doesn't really know what it is? I mean, can you, in a nutshell? I mean, I don't. It's
the things that go along with it. It's not just, they used to call it new math. Have you ever sat down with kids and tried to show them how to divide something?
Yeah. They do this
it's
1 inch deep, mile wide thing instead
insane.
of actually getting into the subject.
And when even if they get a right answer, they barely even know what they're doing. They don't even understand it. They understand a procedure, but not even what they're doing. It's like, and if you try to teach them the right way or an easy way, I've tried to help one person. They said, well, I get in trouble if I do it that way.
Wow.
Yeah. But also someone sent me about an hour-long video of the roots of Common Core. And I was like, why in the world would somebody send me an hour-long video? I'm kind of busy, right? And I got like 3 or 4 minutes into this, and I'm like, oh my goodness. These are the people that intentionally wrote Common Core explicitly to create social change. Guess what it's done? It's created social change. Right. So instead of saying, speaking of math again, 2 trains one leaves Chicago, one leaves, Denver going 50 miles an hour, all that stuff. Instead of doing it the old way, it's now 2 trains leave. One leaves from Chicago with their 2 moms, and this one leaves DC with his gay friend. And what time does everyone else have enough money to run? And so they bring all the social stuff into a math question.
What do they call that? There's a term for that, because it's like, okay, so you're in the car, you're driving 30 miles to the theme park, and well, who's gone to the theme park?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who can afford it?
Who can afford it? Should everybody be able to go? Should it be free? Should your parents be able to tell you if you can go or not?
What do you think about that? Yeah,
there's a forum that's taught. It's called, I can't remember the name of it, but Dr. James Lindsay talked about it and kind of brought that to the light.
That is not a bug. That is a feature of Common Core.
Yeah, like cultural culturally relevant teaching. And then we have trauma-informed teaching now where, every kid needs to be treated like they have trauma. And then we need to treat that trauma in the school system. We have social emotional learning and all those things that have just kind of creeped in and really exacerbated during COVID.
Right.
When the funding was there for those programs.
So getting back to number one involves removing those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Getting back to, we say it all the time, getting back to the basics.
Yeah.
And many schools are doing that. Getting phones out of the way, by the way, I think is part of it.
Well, they get the phones out of the way, but then they're still on their iPad.
Yeah.
1-to-1 iPads. What's that about? I mean, how does that?
That is part of the problem.
And what happened to textbooks? I mean, you could do a textbook for math and have it for 10 years. I mean, does math change?
No. I was going to give you a flip answer, but I'm on a podcast. They may take me seriously.
Right.
Yeah. When the 1-to-1 iPad started coming out, I thought, this is interesting.
And now we're taking their phones.
Yeah.
So something has to be done.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question. I know that I probably should have asked it earlier, but so you vote conservatively. You're on the front lines of fighting for our freedoms. You vote for parental rights against any of the woke stuff in the school system. You voted for to get rid of taxpayer-funded DEI, and I know, you adamant about that meritocracy. How do you reconcile or how do you answer the question? Like many families, yours is divided politically, but as a governor and having a wife that's so vocal about it. And, in the NAACP, how do you suppose you'll manage that?
Well, this is interesting.
I know it's a tough question.
So first of all, just to be clear, it's not the national. In the national NAACP is different than the state.
So it's the local. Okay.
I think she is now part of the board. I think she got involved in leadership in part to make change.
Right. Of course.
So.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I love my wife. We've been married. I know I'm getting a little gray up there, but I don't look that old. I know a lot of times people tell me that, but we've been married. Next year it'll be 40 years.
Wow.
So
congratulations, man.
One woman. So we got married as kids. Kids. She doesn't like me to use the term teenagers because it sounds like a shotgun wedding, which it wasn't.
Right.
But I was pretty much, I just said, you know what? I'm not waiting. We're moving this date up. This is my woman. And, put a ring on it, And so that's kind of what we did. So, and we weren't really political. We were just people. And she's technically an independent in her head, although she did register as a Democrat to vote for a friend once and just never changed it back. But how we do it is just like other families do it to some extent. I actually thought that was going to be an issue when I first ran. And then I realized that 25% of Iowans are like that.
I was like that. I mean, it's not something you think about when you're in love and you're young and you're whatever. I mean, you probably don't even talk politics in the beginning,
I had a meeting Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday with a guy, and he brought up the topic and he says, Eddie, this is a Democrat. He says, Eddie, there's no amount of anything they can throw at you and negative advertising, I'm voting for you. He says, the biggest thing for me is how you support your wife. Like, dude, I've seen it. When you guys work together, you can work together. When you can't, you can't.
Right.
And he says, I have seen that. And this dude I said, dude, you need to say that on camera.
Yeah.
But he understood. He says, man, your love for your wife and your family, I see it. There's nothing they can say. And we didn't meet over politics. I was, I don't want to say who it is, but he had an event this past weekend and we were working on a proclamation. And that's why we were meeting. He wanted a proclamation from the governor. So we were just talking and he said, dude, I am so impressed with how you support your family and your wife when you can support each other. But I think in general, if people have concern about that, I mean, check my record. That's one thing. And did I mention earlier in the conversation the amount of strength it comes to be different, or it requires to be different? I would take, I was talking with someone about ministry. And you don't want to disparage people one way or the other. There's advantages to both. So there are people who have been in the faith. The parents were Christians. They went to Sunday school. They did this. They went to Wednesday Bible study. They went to all the VBS camps and they got in ministry. They have a testimony, right? And then there's the other guy who was on drugs, came to Christ, changed his entire life. He has a wonderful testimony. Both have testimonies. One can reach one set of people that the other may not be able to reach. Both are needed. So for somebody who has been a conservative for the last 20 plus years, I mean, been a Republican certainly longer than that. I was probably always conservative, just never was a Republican until I kind of grew up and like, wait a minute, why am I voting for something I disagree with?
Right. Just
because they got a D. And, I have my theory about why that is. I'll talk about that later. But to start saying, wait a minute, guys, this is a little different. If we believe something on Sunday, why are we not believing it Monday through Saturday?
Right.
Why are we promoting people who attack you for your beliefs?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's just one aspect of it. Or why do you support people who effectively just disagree with you, right? But may agree with you on one thing.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So just to kind of finish that thought, I think people, and actually you probably said it best when you were at our launch, and about how we build bridges and how we talk to people with love and issue-based conversations, not party-based conversations all the time, right?
Right.
This is an issue. Let's talk about this issue. Yes, this is typically an issue on the right, but let's talk about that issue.
And I think that's it might be one of the reasons for one of your talents there is if you can deal with some disagreements in your home with your wife like that, and at the end of the day still love each other and raise a family, how much easier is it to deal with a colleague or a constituent or somebody that has a different opinion,
right? And
still come from that place of love,
right?
Yet still be firm in your convictions. And so I think it's like a training ground almost.
I think it's great. And to your point, I think that's one reason why I reach a lot of people that many of our other conservatives can't. And I think it's why I am the only Republican in the Iowa House who wins in a blue/purple district while being a true conservative. And when I'll say it like this, when I went to DC a couple months ago, when people found out that I was thinking about running, that was one of the questions that kept coming up between the different groups that we met. So we're intrigued by this. Tell me about this. How does that work? And I think the phrase that one of them used, one of the groups that we met with, was, so usually when a Republican outperforms the president, that's not, that's happened more than once or twice or three times, right? This is not terribly, breaking news, but usually if you're in a blue district, and forgive me for saying it this way, but the way they thread it was typically that person ends up being Susan Collins. No offense to Susan Collins. She does what she has to do. She believes what she believes. But what they were saying is that you are typically a person that's kind of, can you tell if they're Republican or not?
Right.
Do they have any values, right? And they said, well, we're intrigued by you, Eddie, because you tend to actually move people with you instead of just asking for the vote. It's about persuasion and not, hey, I just need your vote. Just keep doing what you're doing. Like, let's really talk about an issue, and hopefully I can bring you along with me.
Yeah, and you're genuine and you care about people. I think it's people know that within the first 2 minutes of meeting you.
My daughter said that one time. She said, okay, probably broke a few grammatical rules, but she says, Dad, I don't, one thing about you, and this is my more liberal daughter. She's not as, she's a little left. And she says, Dad, one thing about you, you're the people lovingest guy that I've ever met.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's end on that.
Yeah.
How can people reach you, and how can they support your campaign?
So first of all, thank you guys. Thank you for this interview. And then thank you guys for following me. I am so ecstatic to be part of such a great grassroots campaign. You can go to eddie4iowa.com. The 4 is a numeral 4. EDDIE, numeral 4, IOWA.com. And then I'm on the socials. So Facebook, Eddie for Iowa. X is just Eddie Andrews. Instagram, Eddie Andrews Rocks. Yes, I did take that long time before I was even Eddie Andrews was taken. Never thought that would be used for a political thing. We're just having fun. And you'll see me out there. And please follow so you can be so that you can follow us. And then, if you have a rich uncle, it wouldn't hurt to click the donate button.
Like one of your opponent's rich in-laws.
Yeah. Yeah, we do not.
Yeah, you are true grassroots, not just really pretending to be.
And just follow us. Send us my phone number. I put it on every piece of literature for the last 6 years. It is really my phone number. And yes, people do call it to find out if I was kidding.
And he'll answer.
515-800 Iowa. There was one person who was one of the Gen Z people was like, how do you get Iowa out of phone number? Like, no, there's the little letters on the bottom. So
right.
515-800-4692 if you can't figure that out.
Right.
So
I do want to promote one of your events that's coming up. My friend Eric, who's a supporter of yours.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to come and film it. I talked to him the other day, and I think you're going to be on a panel with Mike Buslow and Brad Sherman. And it's maybe you don't know about it yet. Iowa Faith and Freedom.
Oh, yeah.
Central Iowa House Party and Candidate Forum. Meet 3 potential candidates for Iowa governor. It's Thursday, July 31st, 5:30 to 8 p.m. Coming right up. Deli sandwiches and light refreshments, casual attire at the home of Gary and Shelley Pitts. So you could probably find this on his Facebook page, but take a look. It'll be a great opportunity to meet Eddie and to listen to everybody and hear what they have to say. You can check out, I've got an event coming up. It's August 16th, 1 to 3 at the Great White Buffalo. Oliver4Iowa.com.
There you go, Oliver. Look at there, Oliver.
I borrowed that from Eddie, Oliver4Iowa.com. So, Eddie, thank you so much, man, for everything you do, for who you are, for how much you give of yourself. I mean, the amount of service. I mean, you are a service-driven machine, and I just appreciate that about you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us today. God bless you, man.
It's an honor.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.